The morning shift at Luna Station began like any other day. Captain Juan Park sipped her coffee while watching Earth rotate slowly below through the observation deck windows. The blue marble looked peaceful from here, completely unaware that the entire galaxy was about to change forever. G1 had been stationed at Luna Station for 3 years now. She commanded the Terran Defense Force Communications Array, which monitored space traffic and maintained contact with the few alien species that bothered to talk to humans. Most aliens considered Earth a curiosity at best and a danger at worst. Humans came from what they called a death world, a planet so hostile that most galactic species could not even visit without environmental suits. The communication console began beeping frantically. Lieutenant Minho Choi looked up from his station, with confusion written across his face. He was young, barely 25, and had only been assigned to deep space monitoring for 6 months. Captain Park, I am receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council chambers, Minho said, his voice uncertain. The signal is coming from Nexus Prime. Giwan set down her coffee cup and walked over to Minho's station. Nexus Prime was the center of galactic civilization, home to the Galactic Council where hundreds of alien species gathered to discuss trade and politics. Earth had been invited to join the Council only recently, and most species still treated humans like dangerous children who needed to be watched carefully. Put it through the main speakers, Giwan ordered. The transmission crackled to life, filled with static and what sounded like panic. The voice belonged to Ambassador Velinari of the Catherian species. Giwan had met her once during a diplomatic conference. The Catherians were tall, elegant beings with crystalline skin that reflected light in beautiful patterns. They were also completely peaceful, having evolved on a world with no predators and unlimited resources. This is Ambassador Velinari broadcasting, on all emergency frequencies, the voice said, trembling with fear. The Vorthok swarm approaches our space. They have already consumed 17 star systems. Our people are evacuating, but we have nowhere to run. The swarm follows us everywhere. Giwan felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard whispers about the Vorthok swarm in intelligence briefings. They were a hive mind species that consumed everything in their path, converting organic matter into more of themselves. Most galactic analysts believe they were just a myth, a boogeyman story told to frighten children. We have tried to negotiate, Velinari continued. We have offered them technology, resources, entire star systems. They do not respond to communication, they only consume. The Florarian collective is gone. The ethereal clouds have been absorbed. We are next. Minho looked at Jiwan with wide eyes. Captain, is this real? The Vorthok swarm actually exists. Before Guan could answer, Velinari's voice continued with growing desperation. To any species capable of warfare, we beg for your aid. We know this is not the galactic way. We have lived in peace for thousands of years. But the swarm comes, and we cannot fight them. We do not know how to fight. Our people have never raised a weapon against another living being. We are asking for something we have never needed before. We are asking for warriors. The transmission ended, leaving Luna Station in stunned silence. Giwan stared at the communication console, her mind racing. The peaceful species of the galaxy were crying for help, and they were specifically asking for warriors on Earth. That meant humans. Captain Minho said quietly, "Should we forward this to Earth Command?" Immediately, Giwan replied. Priority 1 classification. And Minho, start monitoring all galactic frequencies. If the Catherians are broadcasting this message, other species might be responding. While Minho worked at his station, Juan contacted Commander Hyun Hu Kim aboard the TDF flagship Indomitable. The massive warship was currently patrolling the outer solar system, watching for threats that might approach Earth. Hunwo was a veteran of the Mars conflicts and one of the most respected military commanders in the Terran Defense Force. Giwan, good to hear from you, Hyunwoo said when his face appeared on the communication screen. What has got you looking so serious? We just received a distress call from the Galactic Council, Guan explained. The Vorthok swarm is real, and they are consuming entire star systems. The peaceful species are asking for military aid. Hyunwoo's expression grew grave. Send me everything you have. I will get my science officer to analyze the data immediately. Chief Science Officer Yuna Lee joined the conversation a few minutes later. She was brilliant, having earned degrees in xenobiology and military strategy before joining the TDF. Dark eyes studied the transmission data with intense focus. The Catherian language patterns indicate extreme stress, Yuna reported. Their brain chemistry literally prevents them from thinking about violence or conflict. For them to even ask for military help means they are truly desperate. More transmissions began flooding in. The plant-like Florarian species sent terrified messages about their colony worlds being stripped bare. The gas cloud ethereals broadcasted psychic screams of pain as their collective consciousness was torn apart. Dozens of other species added their voices to the growing chorus of fear. Each message said the same thing. The Vorthok swarm was coming. They consumed everything. The peaceful species could not fight back. They needed warriors. Admiral So Min Han called an emergency meeting of the Terran Defense Council. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had fought in every major conflict Earth had faced in the past 30 years, and her reputation for tactical brilliance was known throughout human space. "The situation is clear," Admiral Han said to the assembled commanders. "The galaxy's peaceful species are facing extinction. They have specifically requested military aid from any species capable of warfare. That means us." General Wu Songyu raised his hand. "Admiral, we barely have enough ships to defend our own system. How can we take on an enemy that has already consumed 17 star systems?" "Because we are humans," Admiral Han replied simply. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned to fight by fighting everything, every predator, every disease, every natural disaster, every challenge that Earth could throw at us. The peaceful species evolved in paradise. We evolved in hell." "But Admiral," Commander Hyunwoo said, "the Vorthok swarm has technology we have never seen. Their bioships are described as living creatures the size of cities. How do we fight something like that?" Admiral Han smiled grimly. "The same way humans have always fought impossible odds. We refuse to lose, we adapt, we find their weakness, and we keep fighting until either they are dead or we are." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth was about to go to war against an enemy that had already proven it could destroy entire civilizations. The peaceful species of the galaxy were depending on the descendants of Earth's predators to save them. "Prep the fleet," Admiral Han ordered. "Send word to all colonies. Recall every ship. Call up the reserves. The galaxy is crying for help, and Earth's Deathworlders are going to answer." As the meeting ended and commanders rushed to prepare for war, Juon Park stood at the observation deck of Luna Station, watching Earth turn below. Soon, humanity would leave the safety of their home system and venture into a galactic war. The peaceful species had called for warriors, and they were about to discover what warriors from a death world could do. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human warfare had begun. Dr. Taeyeon Jung walked through the corridors of the Galactic Research Station, his boots echoing against the metal floors. The station orbited a neutral moon between Earth and Catherian space, serving as one of the few places where humans and aliens work together. Today, that cooperation would be tested like never before. Taeyeon had spent the last 5 years trying to explain humans to the galaxy. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, he understood both human nature and alien psychology better than almost anyone. The aliens found humans fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. They could not understand how a species could be so violent yet so protective, so aggressive yet so loyal. Dr. Jung called out, "Researcher Cathera," one of the few Catherians who could tolerate being around humans for extended periods. Her crystalline skin flickered with nervous blue patterns. "We have received the military mobilization reports from Earth. Is it true that your species is preparing for war?" Taeyeon nodded grimly. "The Terran Defense Force is mobilizing every available ship and soldier. We are going to help fight the Vorthok swarm." Kithra's skin shifted to deep purple, indicating extreme confusion. "But Dr. Jung, you have seen our tactical analysis. The swarm has consumed entire civilizations. Their bioships are massive beyond comprehension. How can Earth's small fleet possibly make a difference?" "Because we are not like you," Taeyeon explained gently. "Your people evolved on a world of abundance and peace. Every challenge you faced could be solved through cooperation and intelligence. But humans evolved on what your classification system calls a Class 12 death world." The alien researcher's skin went pale yellow with fear. Class 12 was the highest danger rating in the galactic system, reserved for worlds so hostile that most species could not even land on them safely. "Earth tried to kill us every single day for millions of years," Taeyeon continued. "We had to fight giant predators, survive ice ages, overcome diseases that wiped out entire populations, and compete with other human tribes for limited resources. Every human alive today is descended from survivors who refused to give up when everything seemed hopeless." Meanwhile on Earth, Major Nari Kwan was addressing her troops in the Amazon training facility. The 3rd Assault Division specialized in hostile environment warfare, and their training ground was one of the most dangerous places on the planet. Soldiers who could survive in the Amazon rainforest could fight anywhere in the galaxy. "Listen up," Major Kwan shouted over the sounds of the jungle. "Command has given us new orders. We are going to space to fight an enemy that has never been defeated. The aliens think we are crazy for volunteering. They are probably right." Her soldiers laughed. They were used to being called crazy. The 3rd Assault Division recruited from Earth's most extreme military units. They included deep-sea combat specialists who fought in crushing ocean depths, Arctic commandos who operated in temperatures that would freeze most aliens solid, and desert warfare experts who could survive in conditions that would kill most humans. "The enemy uses bioships the size of cities," Major Kwan continued. "They have acid weapons, self-repairing hulls, and they outnumber us 1,000,000 to 1. The peaceful aliens have never seen anything like them before, but we have." Sergeant Junho Nam raised his hand. "Major, what do you mean we have seen them before?" "Think about it," Major Kwan replied. Giant predators that hunt in swarms, use chemical weapons, and adapt to any environment. That sounds like half the creatures we grew up fighting on Earth. The only difference is these ones can fly through space. In the underground training facilities beneath the Rocky Mountains, Colonel HFY was preparing his Special Forces unit. The Berserkers were humanity's most elite soldiers, trained to embrace the primal combat instincts that millions of years of evolution had bred into human DNA. The aliens call us Deathworlders, Colonel HFY told his assembled team. They think it is an insult. They believe we are primitive savages who solve everything with violence. They are wrong about the savage part, but they are right about our relationship with violence. The Berserkers listened intently. These were soldiers who had volunteered for the most dangerous missions, who thrived in situations where normal humans would break under pressure. Every other species in the galaxy developed civilization by avoiding conflict, Colonel HFY explained. They use technology and cooperation to eliminate competition and danger from their lives. But humans develop civilization while fighting for survival every day. We did not eliminate conflict, we learned to master it. Captain Sun Ho Kang was aboard the TDF cruiser Soul's Fury, reviewing tactical data about the Vorthok swarm. His ship was one of the newest in the human fleet, equipped with weapons that most aliens considered barbarically crude. While alien weapons were elegant energy beams and sophisticated particle accelerators, human weapons were kinetic cannons that fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Captain called engineering. Chief Hannah, I have finished the weapon modifications you requested. That aliens are not going to like what we have done to their energy cannon designs. Hannah had taken the sophisticated alien weapons and rebuilt them using human engineering principles. Instead of elegant efficiency, she had focused on raw power and reliability. The modified weapons were 3 times more powerful but also 3 times more likely to overheat. Most alien species would consider this a terrible design flaw. Humans considered it an acceptable trade-off. How do they perform? In combat simulations, Captain Kong asked. They will punch through bioarmor like it is paper, Hannah replied with satisfaction. The Vorthok swarm has never faced weapons designed by a species that learned engineering while fighting for survival. Back on the research station, Dr. Taeyeon Jung was giving a presentation to a gathering of alien diplomats via holographic transmission. Representatives from dozens of peaceful species watched nervously as he explained what made humans different. Your species see warfare as an unfortunate necessity, Taeyeon said. You fight only when you have no other choice, and you fight with reluctance. Humans are different. We have a saying on Earth, if you want peace, prepare for war. We do not fight because we enjoy violence. We fight because we understand that sometimes violence is the only way to protect what we love. Ambassador Velinari interrupted the transmission. Dr. Jung, with respect, the Vorthok swarm is unlike anything we have faced. They do not negotiate, they do not retreat. They simply consume everything in their path. How can your species succeed where entire civilizations have failed? Because failure is not an option, Taeyeon replied simply. When humans are faced with extinction, we do not accept it gracefully. We fight back with everything we have. We adapt to any environment. We learn from every defeat, and we never stop trying to find a way to win. He paused, looking directly at the alien diplomats through the holographic display. Your species evolved by avoiding predators. Humans evolved by becoming the ultimate predator. The Vorthok swarm thinks they are at the top of the galactic food chain. They are about to discover they are wrong. On military bases across Earth and its colonies, human soldiers were preparing for a war unlike anything they had ever imagined. They studied alien technology, practiced zero-gravity combat, and trained with weapons that could function in the vacuum of space. But their greatest advantage was not their technology or their training. It was their mindset. Lieutenant Minji Kim was briefing new recruits at the Lunar Academy. The aliens cannot understand why we volunteer for this mission, she told them. They think we are either insane or suicidal. They do not realize that humans have been preparing for this war our entire evolutionary history. Every time our ancestors faced extinction, they found a way to survive. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, plagues, predators, resource scarcity, climate change, and war with other human tribes. We are descended from the ones who refuse to die quietly. The new recruits nodded grimly. They understood what Lieutenant Kim meant. They were not just fighting for the peaceful aliens. They were fighting for the right of life to exist in the galaxy. General Wusung, you addressed the final war council before the fleet departed Earth. The Vorthok swarm has never faced an enemy like us, he declared. They have consumed species that gave up when resistance seemed hopeless. They have devoured civilizations that accepted defeat when victory seemed impossible. But they have never fought humans. We come from a world that taught us that the impossible just takes a little longer. We learned that the strongest predator is not always the biggest or the fastest. Sometimes it is simply the one that refuses to give up. The death was awakening, and its children were ready for war. Captain Sun Ho Kang stood on the bridge of the Soul's Fury, watching the stars through the main viewport. His ship was part of the advanced scout fleet, sent ahead to gather intelligence about the Vorthok swarm before the main human fleet arrived. The mission was simple in theory but terrifying in practice. They needed to find the enemy, study their tactics, and survive long enough to report back. "Captain," called Navigator Doyon Lim from his station, "we are approaching the edge of what used to be Florarian space. Long-range sensors are detecting debris fields where the colony world should be." Sun Ho nodded grimly. The Florarian Collective had been one of the most beautiful civilizations in the galaxy. Their worlds were covered in massive cities grown from living plants, with billions of peaceful plant beings living in harmony with their environment. Now those worlds were gone, consumed by the swarm. "Take us in slowly," Sun Ho ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know what we are dealing with before they know we are here." Engineering Chief Hannah Oh looked up from her console. "Captain, the weapon modifications are complete. We now have 3 times the firepower of a standard TDF. CRUISER. The energy cannons will overheat after sustained firing, but they will punch through anything the swarm can throw at us." "Good," Sun Ho replied, "because something tells me we are going to need every advantage we can get." The Soul's fury moved deeper into what had once been Florarian space. The silence was eerie. No communication signals, no ship traffic, no signs of life anywhere. Just empty space where an entire civilization had once flourished. "Contact," announced sensor operator Cha Yung-song. "Multiple large objects detected at the edge of the Kepler system. They are moving in formation toward the galactic core." "Put it on the main screen," Sun Ho ordered. The viewport shifted to show the sensor data, and every human on the bridge fell silent. The Vorthok bioships were unlike anything they had ever seen. They looked like enormous sea creatures swimming through space, their hulls pulsing with organic rhythms. Each ship was easily 10 times the size of the Soul's Fury, and there were hundreds of them. "My God," whispered Communications Officer Yoonji Pyo. "They really are alive." The bioships, that had no visible engines or weapons ports. Instead, their hulls were covered in what looked like giant mouths and tentacles. As the human crew watched, one of the smaller bioships opened its mouth and began consuming the remains of a Florarian space station, breaking down the metal and organic matter into raw materials that were absorbed into its body. Captain Doyon said quietly, "These things are not just warships, they are feeding. The entire swarm is one massive organism that eats everything in its path." Sun Ho studied the alien formation through the tactical display. The swarm moved with perfect coordination, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. There was no visible communication between the bioships, but they acted as a single entity. They are a hive mind, he realized. Every ship is connected to every other ship. They do not need to communicate because they share the same consciousness. Captain Che-Yung reported, "I am detecting smaller craft separating from the main bioships. They appear to be moving in our direction." The tactical display showed dozens of fighter-sized organisms breaking away from the larger bioships. Unlike the massive capital ships, these smaller creatures moved with lightning speed, darting through space like angry hornets. "They have detected us," Sun Ho announced. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. We are about to make first contact with the Vorthok swarm." The Soul's Fury powered up its weapons and shields as the Vorthok fighters approached. The human crew had trained for this moment, but training was different from facing an enemy that had already destroyed 17 star systems. "Fighters closing fast," Doyon reported. "Estimated contact in 30 seconds. "Hannah, are the weapons ready?" Sun Ho asked. "All cannons charged and ready to fire," she replied. "Remember, these modified weapons will overheat quickly. We need to make every shot count." The first wave of Vorthok fighters swept toward the Soul's Fury like a living cloud of death. As they came closer, the human crew could see that they were not mechanical ships at all, but actual living creatures with wings made of some kind of organic membrane and mouths full of razor-sharp teeth. "Fire at will," Sun Ho ordered. The Soul's Fury opened fire with everything it had. The modified energy cannons sent brilliant beams of destruction through space, and several Vorthok fighters exploded in bursts of green ichor. But for every fighter destroyed, 2 more took its place. "They are not slowing down," Che-Yung reported. "The fighters are continuing their attack despite heavy losses." The Vorthok fighters reached the Soul's Fury and began attacking the hull with acid weapons that burned through metal like it was paper. The ship shuddered under the assault, and damage alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. "Hull breach. On deck 7, reported Damage Control Officer Woo-Sung Park. "Emergency force fields are holding, but we cannot take much more of this." Sun Ho made a decision that would have seemed insane to any other species in the galaxy. Instead of retreating, he ordered the ship to move closer to the main Vorthok bioships. Captain Doyon protested, "That is suicide. Those things will tear us apart." "Maybe," Sun Ho replied with a grim smile. "But they have never fought humans before. They expect us to run away when things get difficult. Instead, we are going to show them what Deathworlders do when cornered." The Soul's Fury accelerated toward the nearest bioship, its weapons blazing. The massive creature responded by opening its mouth and releasing a stream of acid that would have dissolved any normal ship. but Hannah had reinforced the hull with experimental armor designed to withstand the most extreme conditions on Earth. "The acid is not penetrating our armor," she reported with satisfaction. "Earth metallurgy is apparently superior to anything the swarm has encountered." As the Soul's Fury closed with the bioship, Sunho could see that its hull was covered in smaller organisms that served as point defense weapons. They fired streams of corrosive material and launched living projectiles that tried to burrow into the human ship. "Return fire," Sunho ordered. "Target the weapon clusters." The human ship's cannons tore through the bioship's defenses, leaving gaping wounds in its organic hull. Green fluid leaked from the damage, and the creature began to writhe in what might have been pain. "It is hurt," Yonji observed with amazement. "The bioship is actually wounded." For the first time in its existence, the Vorthok swarm was experiencing something it had never felt before. The hive mind that connected all the bioships, suddenly filled with an alien sensation that none of them understood: pain, fear, the possibility of defeat. Captain Chow Yung reported, "The entire swarm formation is changing. They are all turning toward us." Hundreds of bioships began converging on the Soul's Fury. The small human vessel had done something that no other species had ever accomplished. It had hurt the swarm, and now every organism in the hive mind wanted to destroy the source of that pain. "Well," Sunho said calmly, "I think we have their attention. Time to show them what humans do when outnumbered." Instead of trying to escape, the Soul's Fury launched a full assault on the nearest bioship. Hannah had loaded the torpedo tubes with experimental warheads designed to disrupt organic tissue at the molecular level. The weapons had never been tested in combat, but they were based on research into Earth's most deadly biological agents. The torpedoes struck the bioship and released their payload. The creature's hull began to dissolve from the inside out as the biological weapon spread through its organic structure. Within minutes, the massive ship was reduced to floating debris. The death of one of their own sent shockwaves through the swarm's hive mind. For the first time in their history, they had encountered an enemy that could not only fight back but could actually kill them. Multiple bioships approaching from all directions, Doyon reported. "We are completely surrounded." "Good son," replied. "Now they cannot miss us, and we cannot miss them." The Soul's Fury spun in space like a dancer, its weapons firing in all directions. The human crew worked with perfect coordination, each person knowing exactly what needed to be done, without being told. This was what millions of years of evolution had created: humans who could think clearly under pressure, who could adapt to any situation, and who would never stop fighting as long as they drew breath. The battle raged for hours. The Soul's Fury was outnumbered 1,000 to 1, but it continued to fight with savage determination. Every time a bioship closed in for what should have been a killing blow, the human crew found a way to turn the tables. When the weapons overheated, Hannah rerouted power from life support. When the shields failed, the crew used the ship's engines to ram damaged bioships. When the hull was breached, damage control teams sealed the gaps with their own bodies, if necessary. By the time the main human fleet arrived, the Soul's Fury was barely functional. Its hull was scarred with acid burns, its weapons were destroyed, and half its systems were offline. But it was still fighting, and around it floated the remains of dozens of Vorthok bioships. "This is Admiral Soman Han aboard the Indomitable," came the transmission. "Captain Kong, what is your status?" Sunho looked around his battered bridge and smiled. "Status report, Admiral. We have made contact with the enemy. They bleed, they die, and they can be beaten. The Vorthok swarm is not invincible. They just never fought anyone who refused to give up. The age of Vorthok dominance was over. The galaxy's ultimate predators had met their match." General Wu Song-yu stood in the middle of what had once been a Catharian meditation garden. The beautiful crystal formations that had grown here for centuries were now being used as training obstacles for alien soldiers learning human combat tactics. It was a strange sight that would have been impossible just months ago. The news of the Soul's Fury's victory had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in their recorded history, someone had fought the Vorthok swarm, and lived to tell about it. More importantly, they had proven that the bioships could be destroyed. The galaxy's peaceful species suddenly had something they had never possessed before: hope. Ambassador Velnadi was called to the Caitherian diplomat who was watching the training with obvious discomfort. "Your people are making excellent progress. They have learned to overcome their biological programming faster than we expected." Belinari's crystalline skin flickered with uncertain colors. "General Yu, I must confess that this transformation frightens me. For thousands of years, my people have never raised a hand in violence. Now we are learning to kill. Are we losing our souls to become warriors?" "No," Wusung replied gently. "You are learning to protect your souls by becoming guardians. There is a difference between fighting for conquest and fighting for survival." Nearby, combat psychologist Chai Yung-song was working with a group of young Catharians who had volunteered for military training. The crystalline beings sat in a circle, their skin patterns shifting as they struggled with concepts their minds had never been designed to understand. "Remember," Chae Yung said softly, "you are not learning to become predators, you are learning to become protectors." When the Vorthok swarm threatens your families, your fear can become strength. Your love for your people can become fury against those who would harm them. One of the young Catharians raised a hand. Teacher Song, how do we overcome the panic that fills our minds when we think about violence? The same way humans learn to overcome fear, Chaiyung replied. You practice until the defensive reactions become automatic. You train until protecting others becomes more important than your own comfort. In another part of the training facility, Sergeant Jun Honam was teaching guerrilla warfare tactics to a group of Florarian plant beings. The aliens looked like walking trees with multiple arms and leaf-covered heads. They moved slowly and communicated through chemical signals that smelled like flowers. The Vorthok bioships are large and powerful, Junho explained, but that also makes them slow and predictable. You cannot match their strengths, but you can be faster and smarter. Hit them where they are weak, then disappear before they can respond. The Florarians released pheromones that translated as confusion. Sergeant Nam, we do not understand. How can we disappear? We are not small creatures. Junho smiled and activated a holographic display showing space combat scenarios. Watch this. Your ships can separate into smaller components. Right. Each. The section can act independently. Yes, replied the lead Florarian. Our vessels are grown as clusters of seed pods that can separate for exploration or emergency evacuation. Perfect, Junho said. Instead of fighting as one large target, you fight as a swarm of small targets. The bioships cannot eat what they cannot catch on the far side of the facility. Lieutenant Minji Kim was working with the most unusual students of all. The ethereal beings existed as sentient gas clouds that could barely maintain physical form in normal atmosphere. They communicated through electromagnetic pulses and had never needed physical bodies or weapons. Your greatest advantage is also your greatest weakness, Mingi explained to the shimmering cloud beings. The Vorthok swarm consumes physical matter. They have no experience fighting enemies they cannot bite or digest. The lead ethereal pulsed with curious energy patterns. Lieutenant Kim, how does one who has no body fight those who consume bodies? You become the storm, Minji replied. You surround their bioships and disrupt their electrical systems. You become lightning and electromagnetic chaos. They cannot eat lightning. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Medic Yeonji was treating wounded aliens who had been rescued from swarm attacks. The survivors brought crucial intelligence about Vorthok tactics and biology. More importantly, they brought stories of resistance and survival that inspired other species to keep fighting. The bioships have a weakness, reported a wounded ethereal who had escaped the destruction of his home system. They must periodically return to larger organisms to share nutrients and information. When they do this, they are vulnerable for several minutes. Yanji carefully recorded this information while treating the ethereal's energy depletion injuries. How often do they need to do this feeding process? Every few days in combat situations, the alien replied. The smaller fighter organisms cannot sustain themselves independently for long periods. This intelligence was immediately passed to military strategist Kang Min-yoon, who was developing new tactics based on lessons learned from each encounter with the swarm. Kang Min had realized that traditional military thinking would not work against the Vorthok. Instead, humans needed to teach alien species to fight like survivors. The key is not to fight like soldiers, Kang Min explained to a gathering of alien military leaders. Soldiers fight battles, survivors fight for their lives. The swarm expects organized resistance that can be overwhelmed with superior numbers. They do not expect desperate creativity. He activated a tactical display showing successful engagements from the past month. Look at these victories. The Fleur won by pretending to be dead, then attacking when the bioships came to feed. The Catharians won by using their crystal technology to create decoy ships that exploded when consumed. The ethereals won by hiding inside asteroid fields and attacking from ambush. Each species is learning to use their unique abilities in ways the swarm cannot predict, Kang Min continued. The Vorthok hive mind adapts quickly to conventional tactics, but it struggles with unpredictable behavior. Ambassador Velinari stood up during the briefing. Strategist Yoon, are you saying that our survival depends on becoming as unpredictable as humans? Exactly, Kang Min replied with a grim smile. The swarm has consumed civilizations that fought with logic and order. They have never faced enemies who fight with desperate imagination. Back in the training areas, the results of human instruction were becoming visible. Catharian crystals were learning to work in small teams, supporting each other through the psychological trauma of combat. Florarian plant beings were developing rapid response tactics that used their natural ability to regrow damaged parts. Ethereal gas clouds were practicing electromagnetic warfare that could disable bioship nervous systems. But the most important change was not in tactics or technology, it was in attitude. The peaceful species were learning something that humans had always known. Sometimes love requires violence, and sometimes the only way to preserve life is to be willing to fight for it. Dr. Tae Yong-jung observed the transformation with mixed feelings. We are changing them, he said to General Woo-sung during one of their regular meetings. These species will never be the same after this war. No, Woo-sung agreed. But they will be alive, and maybe that is more important than staying the same. The training continued day and night. Alien species that had never hurt another living being were learning to coordinate military strikes. Civilizations that had solved every problem through negotiation were developing weapons of war. The galaxy's peaceful species were becoming something. New survivors who would fight for their right to exist. Reports came in daily from across the galaxy. The swarm was still advancing, still consuming star systems, but their progress had slowed. For every world they devoured, they faced increasing resistance. The galaxy was learning to bite back. The Vorthok swarm made one critical mistake, Kangman told the assembled alien leaders during their final strategy meeting. They assumed that peaceful meant helpless. They thought that creatures who choose not to fight cannot learn to fight. They were wrong. Every species in this galaxy developed intelligence to survive their environment, he continued. You used that intelligence to create peace and abundance. Now you are learning to use that same intelligence to wage war. The swarm is about to discover that there is no enemy more dangerous than someone who fights to protect everything they love. The galaxy had learned to fight, and the final battle was coming. Admiral Yemin Ru stood on the bridge of the flagship Taras Wrath, watching the largest fleet in galactic history assemble around him. Ships from dozens of species filled the space near Nexus Prime, each vessel representing a civilization that had learned to fight for its survival. The sight would have been impossible just 1 year ago. Fleet status report, Yemin called to his communications officer. All human vessels reporting ready for combat, replied communications officer Seo Jinbei. Catharian crystal ships are charged and operational. Florarian biovessels have completed their final growth cycle. Ethereal storm clouds are maintaining formation. Total fleet strength, 3,742 ships. Yemin nodded grimly. It was an impressive number, but intelligence reports indicated that the Vorthok swarm had gathered over 50,000 bioships for their final assault on the galactic core. The peaceful species had learned to fight, but they were still outnumbered, 15-1. Circle Tactical Officer Youngjian. Long-range sensors are detecting the swarm approaching from the outer rim. Estimated arrival time, 6 hours. Signal all ships, Yemin ordered. This is it. Today we find out if the galaxy lives or dies. Across the fleet, alien commanders who had once been diplomats and scientists prepared for the most important battle in galactic history. Ambassador Velinari now wore the armor of a Catharian war leader, her crystalline skin glowing with patterns that meant determination and courage. She commanded a squadron of crystal ships that could phase in and out of normal space. My warriors, Velinari broadcast to her ships. Remember what the humans taught us. We do not fight because we love violence. We fight because we love life. In the Florarian sector, Commander Blumhoff Spring prepared his living warships for battle. The plant beings had grown their vessels specifically for combat, each ship capable of rapid regeneration and equipped with weapons that fired explosive seed pods. The Florarians had learned that sometimes even flowers must grow thorns. Children of the soil, Blumhoff Spring transmitted through chemical signals. Today we prove that life is stronger than death. The ethereal beings swirled in massive storm formations, their gas cloud bodies crackling with electromagnetic energy. They had practiced for months to coordinate their attacks, learning to become living lightning that could disrupt bioship, nervous systems. Spirits of the void, pulsed their leader Stormheart. We shall become the tempest that destroys our enemies. On the Terra's Wrath, General Wu Sung-yu reviewed the final battle plan with the human fleet commanders. The strategy was typically human, aggressive, unpredictable, and completely insane by normal galactic standards. The swarm expects us to form defensive lines and try to hold territory, Wu Sung explained. Instead, we are going to attack their main body directly. Every ship, every species, straight at their largest bioships. General, protested one of the Catharian liaison officers, that is suicide. The main bioships are the size of moons. They have defensive weapons that can destroy entire fleets. Exactly, Wu Sung replied with a predatory smile. They will not expect anyone to be stupid enough to attack them directly. The element of surprise is worth more than any defensive position. As the hours passed, the Vorthok swarm became visible on long-range sensors. The bioships moved in perfect formation, their organic hulls pulsing with hungry anticipation. At the center of the formation was something that made even veteran human commanders feel fear. The Swarm Queen, a bioship so massive it had its own gravitational field. Sweet Mother of God, whispered Captain Sun Ho Kong, who had recovered from his injuries and returned to command the rebuilt Soul's Fury. That thing is the size of a small planet. The Swarm Queen was the mother organism of the entire Vorthok species. Every bioship in the galaxy had been born from her, and through her, the hive mind controlled the actions of millions of smaller organisms. Destroying her would cripple the entire swarm. But she was protected by thousands of bioships and had never been seriously threatened in her billion-year existence. All ships, Admiral Yemin broadcast across the fleet. The enemy is in sight. Today we fight not just for our own species, but for the right of peaceful life to exist in this galaxy. Today we show the universe that love is stronger than hunger, that cooperation is stronger than consumption. and that sometimes the smallest beings can defeat the largest monsters. The Vorthok swarm detected the approaching fleet and began to accelerate. Their bioships opened massive mouths filled with rows of crystalline teeth, ready to consume everything in their path. The hive mind was confident. They had devoured 17 star systems. No force in the galaxy could stop them. Now they were about to learn how wrong they could be. All ships, attack formation, Yemen ordered. Target the Queen. Everything we have, everything we are, throw it at that monster. The combined fleet charged toward the swarm in a display of courage that would be remembered for millennia. Human dreadnoughts fired kinetic weapons that punched through bioarmor like paper. Catharian crystal ships phased through space to attack from impossible angles. Florarian vessels released clouds of explosive seeds that turned bioships into garden compost. Ethereal beings became living storms that fried bioship nervous systems. But the swarm fought back with terrifying fury. Bioships the size of cities opened their mouths and released streams of acid that dissolved entire squadrons. Fighter organisms swarmed like locusts, overwhelming smaller vessels with sheer numbers. For every bioship destroyed, 2 more took its place. "We are losing too many ships," reported Tactical Officer Young Jion. "At this rate, we will be overwhelmed before we reach the Queen." That was when the human fleet commanders made a decision that defined their species. Instead of retreating or trying to preserve their forces, they accelerated directly into the heaviest enemy fire. All human vessels, broadcast Captain Seojin Bay, ramming speed. "If we cannot shoot our way through, we will punch our way through." Human ships began using themselves as weapons, ramming into bioships and detonating their reactors at the moment of impact. It was a tactic no other species would have considered, but humans had learned long ago that sometimes victory required the ultimate sacrifice. The sight of human crews deliberately sacrificing themselves to clear a path for their allies sent shockwaves through both the galactic fleet and the swarm's hive mind. The Vorthok had never encountered beings willing to die to protect others. The concept was so alien to their consumption-based existence that it caused errors in their collective thinking. "That humans are teaching us again," Ambassador Velinari transmitted to her crystal ships. "They show us that some things are worth dying for. Follow their example. Clear the path to the Queen." One by one, ships from every species began copying the human tactic. Catharian vessels phased inside bioships and exploded. Florarian ships triggered biological chain reactions that consumed entire swarm formations. Ethereal beings overloaded their energy patterns to create electromagnetic pulses that disabled dozens of bioships. The Queen herself began to take notice. For the first time in her billion-year existence, the swarm was losing a battle. Smaller creatures were defeating her children through tactics she could not understand. Her hive mind struggled to comprehend how beings could choose death over consumption. That confusion became a weakness when Communications Officer Young Jion made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral," she called to Yemen, "I am detecting something strange. The dying thoughts of our people are being transmitted into the swarm's hive mind. Every time one of our ships sacrifices itself, the bioships pause for a moment." "What does that mean?" Yemen asked. "It means they are feeling our emotions," Youngji replied with growing excitement. "The hive mind is experiencing human sacrifice, alien courage, and the concept of fighting for others. These are emotions they have never felt before." Yemen understood immediately. "Signal all ships. When you die, think about what you are dying for. Fill your minds with love for your families, pride in your species, hope for the future. Make the swarm feel what we feel." The order spread across the fleet, and something miraculous began to happen. As ships were destroyed, their crews filled their final moments with thoughts of home, family, and the peaceful future they were fighting to preserve. These emotions flooded into the swarm's hive mind like poison. The Vorthok collective consciousness had been built around a single concept: consumption. They understood hunger, growth, and the need to devour everything in their path. But love, sacrifice, and hope were completely foreign concepts that their billion-year-old minds could not process. The Queen began to convulse as wave after wave of alien emotion crashed through her consciousness. Her children, the bioships, started to falter as their shared mind became overwhelmed with feelings they had no framework to understand. "She is breaking down," Youngji reported with amazement. "The Queen's mind is fragmenting under the weight of our emotions." All remaining ships, Admiral Yemen ordered, "Final assault on the Queen. Show her what we fight for." The surviving vessels of the galactic fleet threw themselves at the massive Queen organism with desperate fury. Human ships fired their last weapons. Catharian vessels phased directly into her hull. Florarian ships triggered biological weapons that ate through her armor. Ethereal beings became living lightning that burned through her nervous system. But it was the continuous stream of sacrificial emotions that delivered the killing blow. The Queen's hive mind, designed for a billion years of simple consumption, could not cope with the complex emotions of species that fought for love instead of hunger. With a psychic scream that echoed across the galaxy, the Swarm Queen died. Her massive body went dark, and across space, every bioship connected to her consciousness simply stopped moving. The Vorthok swarm, which had consumed 17 star systems and threatened the entire galaxy, was defeated not by superior weapons or larger fleets, but by something they could never understand: the willingness of different species to sacrifice everything for each other. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors among the wreckage, Admiral Yemen stood on his damaged bridge and looked out at the stars. The galaxy was safe, but the price had been enormous. Thousands of ships and millions of lives had been lost. Was it worth it? Asked Communications Officer Sio Jinbei, who had survived the final battle with injuries that would take months to heal. Yes, Yemen replied without hesitation. We saved trillions of lives and preserved the right of peaceful species to exist. That is always worth fighting for. The galaxy had learned that sometimes peace must be defended with war, that love sometimes requires violence, and that the most powerful weapon in the universe is not a gun or a bomb, but the willingness to sacrifice for others. The age of the Vorthok swarm was over. The age of galactic unity had begun.